An important part of our mission of friendship here in the Soviet Union has been to play for you a great deal of American music. But this mission must work both ways in order to accomplish real friendship. And so we are now going to play for our American television audience the entire huge first movement of the Seventh Symphony by Shostakovich, a work written in 1941, the first year of the war, and dedicated to Shostakovich's beloved and at the time besieged city of Leningrad. Now, just before we play it for you now, I would like most humbly and respectfully to welcome to this audience Mr. Shostakovich himself, and I would like to thank him personally and in the name of my country for the wonderful music he has given us.
Visionary Leonard Bernstein in Moscow back in 1959 at the very pinnacle of the Cold War and the heightened Russophobia that gripped this nation in the second Red Scare. We've gone through two Red Scares, now we have the Bear Scare. And we have no one like him today doing this, except for one of my guests, a couple of my guests who go to Russia. I went to Russia, and everyone should go to Russia. They really should, and see for themselves. That was a remarkable period of time because the Soviet Union was under attack by all of Eastern Europe, all of it, and Western Europe, Italy, Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, Finland was up there as part of that siege. At any rate, I went to see, was going to see the Seventh Symphony played right here in New York City at Lincoln Center a couple of years back, but because of the Russophobia, they canceled the concert, okay? It's bad throughout Western Europe, and we're going to talk about that and many other.
That was about 3 years, almost 3 years to the day.
That was canceled. Yes, you're right, Reggie. So I got a great show today, by the way, and I stayed up all night reading the book by one of the books by Andrei Martyanov and Martyanov, and he is an expert on Russian and all countries' military strategies and affairs. He is he served as a officer in the Soviet Navy. He is charismatic. He's colorful and has a delightfully wicked sense of humor. I love this guy. I listened to 3 podcasts with him last night. At any rate, he doesn't mince words or suffer fools gladly. His books are America's Final War, Disintegration, the Real Revolution in Military Affairs, and the one I'm reading right now, Losing Military Supremacy, a must-watch. All right, and also we have Larry Johnson. I'm sorry, Larry. We're gonna play a little Shostakovich and come back with both of you. You all know Larry Johnson. He needs no introduction. Former CIA analyst. He worked with the State Department, counterterrorism. We'll be back with these 2 remarkable individuals. Critical Live on the Fly. And I welcome right now Larry Johnson. How are you, buddy? You there?
I'm good, man. Hey,
All
can
right.
you boost the sound on your end?
On my end? Well,
I'm. Yeah.
Am I at my max here? Okay, can you hear me now, Larry?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay, I'll yell into the phone like I'm a racetrack announcer, okay? All right, and Andrei, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you better.
All right.
Before that, I could barely hear you.
Should I give you another introduction? Are you okay with what I said earlier? Could you hear that?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
I'm just me.
All right.
Nothing special.
I got to tell you something. You had me up really late last night. Reading, because I ordered your book, the one I just Losing Military Supremacy, at the behest of Larry Johnson. So I got that. It came a day late, like it came last night. So I already got it on a Kindle. So I stayed up late, and it's so brilliant. It really is, and people should read that about losing military supremacy. It's written in 2018. Now, I want to just go to you first here about Trump says we got the greatest military in the history of the world. What do you say about that?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, for you. I'm going to go to you first, Andrei.
Yeah, Trump is not the first one. The first one was, of course, Mr. Obama, who characterized the United States as the prime fighting force in history, which probably launched the spinning of Napoleon, Manstein, Zhukov, Rokossovsky, and others in their graves. But what can I say? It's an American political show, and you can claim whatever you want. But of course, it has nothing to do with the reality. And it also has everything to do with the level of the military professionalism in the American political circles, who primarily graduated school of the advanced military studies, such as the movie Patton and movie Top Gun Maverick. That's pretty much it. So, and I will not say anything new if I quote Major General Robert Latif, brilliant man, PhD in physics, Major General, 20 years in DARPA. And what he states in his rather interesting book, not that I agree with everything in it, Future Wars, he states that everything that American public, and including political people in the United States, know about war, they know it from the entertainment. And so that's pretty much summarizes it well. Trump obviously has no clue about war operations, planning, operational strategic planning. And strategic planning and strategic forecasting does not exist in the United States as the craft anymore. It wasn't the first rate before, but this time it's just simply gone.
Right. Larry, I think you concur with that because we spoke about it. You said that Andrei's book was so prophetic. Now, how does it play out as being prophetic today, what you read in 2018? Larry?
Yeah, no, I mean, everything he said. In 2022, I think was when I first read it. And at that point, we didn't realize that the United States was incapable of producing enough artillery shells to sustain a modern war. We didn't realize that the United States had basically squandered its industrial capability. Let me give you a stat that is my favorite news stat. Right now, to build F-35 fighter, it takes 18 to 24 months. In 1943, when the United States was building B-24 Liberator bombers, we could assemble one in 63 minutes. We could fully have it outfitted and ready to fly in 18 to 24 hours. That right there shows how bad we are. What Trump should say is, we've got the most expensive, useless military in the world because we're set up for basically expeditionary military operations and don't have the ability to sustain ourselves in the field for more than a month or two.
Right. In the book, you talk about continental power versus sea power, Andrei, that the U.S. at one point was a major sea power in the Pacific Ocean in World War II, but what they have now is basically obsolete, and they're certainly not a continental power. They are, they have the buffer zones, the two Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, but Russia is like an incredible continental land power.
Well, yeah, and we have to also kind of clarify even more about the United States, which still remains great naval power, make no mistake. For all gigantic problems of the U.S. Navy and obsolescence of most of its surface components, the United States Navy still retains excellent submarine force. It all has problems. It's becoming, well, not obsolete, but it is nearing, threshold when it may become obsolete, but it's still a great naval power. But in terms of land power and continental warfare, United States doesn't understand continental warfare. It doesn't have cultural DNA, which otherwise, projects, and you have the effects of this cultural DNA through the military education, some things like education and operational planning, strategic planning. The United States doesn't have this. And if you think about it, it is primarily expeditionary power. The greatest American war, together with the greatest American land battle, which it ever fought, which was the Battle of the Bulge, obviously the operation, the offensive of Wehrmacht in Ardennes, and of course counteroffensive by the Allies. And so that was the maximum they ever had. And then suddenly, if not for Eisenhower, obviously, who finished this absolutely senseless war in Korea, not that United States was an aggressor there. United States was not. It was the North Korea which unleashed that war. But the point is, already then, Eisenhower knew the limitations of the American land power. But again, Eisenhower was the last of the dinosaurs, of the true American strategists who understood that all. After that, you know what happened. Right. Vietnam, and after that, Iraq, it was a catastrophe, essentially, so because wars are not fought as a single battle.
Yeah. Larry, in the book, Andrei cites a writer by the name of Patrick Armstrong, and who says in the book, he quotes him, he says he's troubled by the thought that when was the last time the U.S. Won a war, and when was the last time U.S. trained troops fought effectively? Larry.
World War II.
That's
it. And we can give. The reality is, the United States won the war in the Pacific. The United States can take credit that with respect to World War II, we were the primary ones who defeated Japan.
Right.
And we did it. We did it with a loss of 110,000 Marines, Army, sailors, airmen. But in the European theater, it was the Soviets, not the Western Allies that won.
Right.
The Soviets fought and inflicted. I think they inflicted something like 80% of the casualties that the Germans suffered throughout World War II.
Yeah, 90% in the Eastern Front, and then after D-Day, it went down to 87% or something like that. Which, of course, Larry, we got into that 3 years after Operation Barbarossa was commenced.
Actually, 1 year.
No, 44. I'm talking about in France. I'm talking about Europe.
Landing,
yes,
landing.
Yes,
okay, yeah,
on the European continent. Yes, yeah. Unless you count Italy.
Yeah, but the price. The price. One of the reasons I argue that we're so prone to get into these silly, stupid wars today is America has never paid a price in blood from previous wars. We basically only suffered a flesh wound in World War II. In the European theater, we had 189,000 KIA killed in action. There was an additional, the total U.S. losses for World War II in terms of deaths was around 470,000, but about 113,000 of those were people who died because they got sick or they were in a car accident. They weren't combat deaths. Whereas the Russians, in just the Battle of Stalingrad alone, it's estimated 900,000 Soviet soldiers died in that one battle. In other words, almost 3 times the amount of deaths in one battle that we suffered in the entirety of the war in both theaters.
Right.
So that's why Americans, we lost 58,000 in Vietnam.
Right.
I'm not trying to disrespect anybody who lost a loved one in that, but for God's sake, that's a year of car accidents in the United States, deaths by car accident,
Right.
and those 58,000 deaths were strung out over 12 years.
Right.
And the same with deaths in Afghanistan, deaths in Iraq. Good God, we kill a hell of a lot of people in other countries. That's for sure.
I want to go to the Ukrainian war. I'm going to talk about the what happened in the Mideast the last week. We haven't talked about this. We've been obsessed with what's going on in the Mideast. But I want to go back to your book here because we're talking about U.S. power, and Britain is like 10 times worse. You quote, I didn't know this writer, this historian, Corelli Barnett. Right, and he talks about the collapse of the British power. He wrote a book on Montgomery and the Pride and Fall sequences. Can you kind of give us an overview of his assessment of the British fall?
Well, Barnett, apart from being an outstanding historian, one of the last of the Mohicans, actually, before Oxford started producing the imbeciles like Boris Johnson or, whatever the garbage they put out there. No, he was one of the greatest British historians, man of the very clear sight of the reality of the British Empire, apart from being the chair of the Shakespearean Society. It is like me being the, I don't know, the highest order, basically the guy who chairs the George Washington Society. That's highest honor, apart from he was a wordsmith of the incredible scale. So, and he actually was very clear-sighted when talking about British, when talking about that it's already by the World War II, Britain was thinking that it can fight the war and preserve the empire against such powers of Wehrmacht and essentially unified Europe. And he talked about how Britain, together with France, betrayed Soviet Union by the means of essentially denigrating those propositions by Foreign Commissar Mr. Litvinov about the collective security, which Stalin and Litvinov were pushing on Europe to contain Hitler. You know what happened. And it's not only Barnett. Actually, also Alexander Werth writes in his classic book about it. They were sending some people like captains and majors from French and British armies to Moscow, people who have no valid credentials, and that's how they actually all came down to essentially what we know today, of course, as the Munich, signing of the peace in our time with Mr. Chamberlain. Which the whole idea was, especially by the ruling classes of Britain, to channel Nazi Germany and Europe against Soviet Union. Right. So, but they never recovered from the fact that essentially what he says, and this is a brilliant phrase on him, that it was the Germany which was ready to pay, the full price for the Soviet Union, which essentially ended up with the essentially split of Poland. But he also gives a good rundown, so to speak, about the situation when the Soviet Union was proposing essentially to let Poland to basically go Red Army into Czechoslovakia to prevent, the Germany from taking it. Right. But what, as he stated about Poland, oh my God. Yeah. If anybody, any Polish people listen to us, they wouldn't like what you say.
Well, it's true. It's in William Schreier's book about what was his name, Hacha, who was the president. The Soviet Union proposed some kind of security arrangement, and they turned it down. In 1939.
They turned it down. Yeah, because Poland was also being embroiled in its, so to speak, Russophobia. So it's just the combination of the factors. And this is what brought down, essentially, the Great Britain. Even daughter of Churchill, she made a note at some point of time that during the World War II, actually, Churchill was very jealous. He was very envious about FDR and Stalin because, and his daughter stated that he knew it wasn't the big three. It was big 2.5, essentially. And actually, FDR, at some point of time, proposed Stalin to meet separately without Churchill, for which Stalin responded that no, if we're going to meet, we have to meet only all three of us. Stalin was actually honorable man in this respect, and but that's what happened to Great Britain. They trying to fight the essentially the preservation for its empire. They destroyed the empire itself, and the most important thing, which many people do not understand and do not want to keep, take into account, when a meeting in Casablanca, during the FDR and Churchill meeting, they met without Stalin. There was a letter, memorandum, by the chief of the Operational Planning Department of George Marshall, General Stanley Embick, in which he wrote at that time, and it was in 1943, I remember early, and he stated that we have been basically led by the primrose path by British, who never wanted to fight Germans and Wehrmacht, the main theater of operation. They just wanted to fight for their imperialistic purposes and aims. That is American general writing about.
Wow.
So Americans knew at that time what British were trying to accomplish, not to take anything from heroism of British seamen, British soldiers, and British people. But this is how the political elites thought about all that at that time. And when you look at the deeper into the drivers of this whole situation, which today we live with the consequences of it, I am on the record stating time after time that special military operation in Ukraine are the final salvos of the World War II. We can see how this whole thing actually coalesced and then evolved into the Cold War. So this is a very serious adjustment for many so-called American and Western exceptionalists, but they will not accept it anyway.
Well, you're right, absolutely right. And the stuff about Casablanca, they should have had a drink at Rick's joint there in Casablanca with Sam and Bogart. Larry, I want to talk about the Nazification. I mean, the Nazi element, the denazification. Today, I woke up to this news that the new MI6 chief, her name is Blaise Wally. Her grandfather was a Nazi spy for Hitler. He's from Ukraine, known as the Butcher. Does that surprise you?
No. It is remarkable how far the Brits sort of revealing their true colors. Her grandfather was actually a member of the Russian army. He defected or was captured, and then he basically enlisted. But he just didn't enlist in some, vanilla Wehrmacht unit. He was accepted into the Waffen SS, and as such participated in, the execution of many Jews and Poles.
Right.
So, a proud family history. I mean, but, she's not the only one. You got the lady in Canada.
Right. I know, but Larry, this is the MI6. You'd think they'd be a little more delicate in who they chose, and you open the wound.
I mean, they've had an obsession with trying to destroy Russia or the Soviet Union since the end of the war.
Right. It actually goes back, Larry, to after the Congress of Vienna. They've had a hard-on for Russia. You know what I mean?
Well,
the Brits.
Yeah.
You want to go far back.
Starting with, I guess, the Crimean War.
Right.
When they were first decided to really take the war there. Before, I guess they'd been allies against Napoleon in the War of 18, in those battles.
Right.
What was interesting is this rebirth of this hideous ideology, Nazism. And here's the modern Russia being the only one willing to stand up and try to squash it, stop it out.
Right.
because it is pernicious and it is vile.
Right. Andrei, I mean, I heard you last night saying, in another interview, not with Larry, but some guy with a beard, and it was about how deep the Nazi culture is in Kiev and Zelensky. I mean, they totally control Kiev. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's a Nazi regime, essentially, and it is propped up by Europeans. They know what is going on. So, but again, it doesn't matter as long as they kill Russians, rape, pillage, so it's fine with them because we're talking not just Russophobia. We're talking about the hatred. Russophobia is the fear of Russia. It's not just fear. They hate Russia with all their guts. British political elite and Washington, they hate Russians. They hate Russian people, not just Russia as a whole, as some after geopolitical construct. And this comes from the traditional admiration for the Nazis. Do not forget who wrote the history of the World War II for the U.S. Army Department of History. I can names like von Manstein or Hauser probably will ring the bell. It was the essentially Wehrmacht which wrote everything for British, who actually took part very much in saving the Nazi and Wehrmacht top. And so we now see this all, basically in action. And they know who those people are. They know who those Nazi or neo-Nazi formations are. And so what can I say? This is the political elite of the West. Right. And I am on the record again that these are the closing salvos of the World War II and the world order which emerged from, Stalin being actually polite and cooperative with the Western allies. Right. And that's the whole other, can of worms. If the Soviet Union could have finished off the Wehrmacht completely on its own, which it could, it would take longer than, obviously, 1945. It probably would take until the end 1947, but it would have been accomplished. But the point is that, obviously, we can see now what the media and political so-called, they're not really that dumb, I don't know, like they're stupid, but of the West is. Listen, scratch any German politician. They have either Waffen-SS or Wehrmacht guys who are their relatives,
Right.
So same goes. Yeah, I mean, U.S. military history and World War II history was written by Nazi and Wehrmacht officers. Right. So what do you expect? It was written by losers. As the result, the United States loses all his wars because it was completely confabulated. The whole defensive doctrine of NATO was written by German generals. Wow. So we have essentially the offspring of the American, I'm not even talking about the BND, the German intelligence and Gellen's organization, which was feeding the cornucopia of the conspiracy theories and, that Soviet Union was about to attack, the Western Europe and things of this nature. This is who they are. Look up who Gellen was.
Yes, Gellen is, yes. Right.
So there you go.
Operation Paperclip, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of
Those
Nazis.
people never went away. Their ideas, their concepts, their views on Russians, whom they consider subhumans, as, by the way, most of the Anglo-American Academy and political elites consider Russians subhumans. It's still there. And so, as a result, we have what we have today.
Right. Hey, Larry. Yeah, very well put, as always. Larry, Andrei made the statement the other day. I think it was during your show. The observation or conclusion that the war that's being fought between the special military operation that's going on, it's a war. Again, it's NATO. Ukraine is basically a rented force, many of them by force labor, and being dragged off the street. But the Russians are fighting against NATO right here, and they are just the instrument. Ukraine, Larry.
Yeah. So it's being used. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, no, Ukraine's a proxy. Since 1995, Ukraine has been a de facto member of NATO. And I say de facto because they participated in every NATO exercise since 1995. The only thing they don't have to do is kick in 5% of their national budget to fund NATO, and they don't have Article 5 protection. Otherwise, they've been a steady participant in all NATO exercises. NATO established a de facto headquarters at Yavoriv, which is sort of the forward operating base of NATO in Ukraine. And that was set up and going in 1997. And
Wow.
so throughout this period, the plan was to train Ukrainian forces so that they would be a proxy army to attack and defeat Russia. That was the plan. And the ultimate goal was to bring Ukraine into NATO officially, thereby to bring all of NATO into that war to defeat Russia.
No, that's sweet.
Things haven't gone quite as as well as they thought they would, and Russia, Russia's learned some hard lessons over the last, now 3 years and 4 months that. I don't think they fully appreciated at the time that they were actually going to be fighting a complete proxy war against NATO. And they thought that they could have negotiated an end to the affair with the Ukrainians, and actually had reached a tentative deal, except it was blown up, sabotaged by Joe Biden, Lloyd Austin, and Boris Johnson.
All right, well, this is a little more Shostakovich, and we'll be right back with Larry and Andrei. Randy Critical live on the fly, Shostakovich. Andrei, are you a classical music fan?
Well, it depends what classical music, but yeah, I do listen to classical music, obviously.
Well, yes, there's 5 different periods of it, but Russian music in the 1850s on, that kind of music, Glazunov, and Tchaikovsky.
Not Glazunov, but Tchaikovsky certainly, Shostakovich absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
Well, and you take a look at the catalog of great Russian composers compared to British composers or American composers. You had Aaron Copland and, of course, Leonard Bernstein, but they all pale in comparison, and literature-wise as well. Huh?
You know what? I certainly listened to Mussorgsky in the interpretation of the Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the Pictures at the exhibition, which is, by the way, I like the original, to be frank. But no, I mean, I wouldn't put down Gershwin. You cannot forget.
No, I'm talking about, I'm talking about classical music, symphonies, symphonic music. No, I'm not talking about Gershwin.
Symphonic music,
jazz.
Symphonic music, Russian symphonic music. And, Rachmaninoff, variations on the Paganini, and obviously Tchaikovsky first concerto. That's the quintessential Russian music.
Right.
His first concerto for piano, and then that pop music, that pop tune of the Nutcracker, like everybody knows it in the world.
I told you he has a sense of humor, man. You really do, and so do you, Larry. Larry, let me ask you a question about the NATO meeting the other day. That garden party they had in NATO. What was that all about? And did it accomplish anything? And what are they going to do? The coalition of the willing.
Yeah, I think it was actually it was done in honor of the British musical group, the Zombies.
Right.
Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? We have never, for those not catching on, the Zombies, It had a song, "The Season of Love."
Right.
What's your name? Who's your daddy? That was the second verse.
Yeah.
No, I have to witness Tutti Frutti Rudy, Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, debase himself. They're going to replace, or you're going to now look up in Roger Thesaurus. When you get to, they want a synonym for kowtow, it'll be Mark Rutte.
Right. Picture him sucking up to. What do you think about where are they? And by the way, Andrei, can you give us a pretty good update of where the special military operation is right now, and is it morphing into a anti-terrorist operation, counterterrorism operation?
Well, I mean, Russians are already actively operating in the Kharkov Oblast. Obviously, Sumy probably will be taken. I don't know if it needs to be taken, but again, even Putin himself says maybe if we will decide to do so. And but also it's in the Kharkov area, in Sumy Oblast, and so it's deep into the now Ukrainian territory. What was before Lugansk Republic is completely liberated. So it's moving, and again, many people do not understand that Russians do not want to really govern those people. You have essentially something like between 15 to 20 million people who hate your God. I mean, there are some people in what used to be Ukraine who still appreciate Russians, but most are not very happy about all that. So Russians are just pushing this militarily along together with the political process. And the main issue here is that Russians are interested in discussing and sampling with the United States on the much larger geopolitical framework. And Ukraine, in this respect, is just one of the links of this larger chain of the events. And what can I say? I will tell you the number right now, okay? And many people say, no, this cannot be right. Well, it's right. The kill ratio right now, roughly, of course it varies, it's not, but kill ratio between Russians and Ukrainians, now 1 to 15 or 20, depending on the sector of the front.
Yeah.
In other words, Russia is doing, and I know it sounds horrible, people will say that, but it is what it is. That's reality of the real war. Russia is exterminating not only armed forces of Ukraine, but essentially what is coming down to the sperm bank of the nation, which decided to essentially do to Russians what Nazi Germany wanted to do. Right. So, and that's what is happening. And if you look at the dynamics of the losses of Ukraine, whatever passes for the Ukrainian armed forces in reality to the combination of the Ukrainians, all kinds of the NATO so-called volunteers and what have you. It's every day, though it's kind of decreased a little bit since February this year, but still, on average, you have about 1,500 killed and wounded a day, what Russians can objectively confirm. So without counting people in the tactical, let alone operational area, which is being burned by Russians daily. So we're looking at probably 1,500 people killed of the armed forces of Ukraine. So it's extermination. So,
Larry, that is basically they have willingly, not them themselves, because a lot of these people, you've seen the videos, just dragged off the streets. And Andrei said they got kids like 12 to 14 years old. They got women that have been with their own units there. They're really scraping the bottom of the barrel to put up a facade, a Potemkin village, if you will, vision of their fighting strength. And it's just, you know what the tragedy is that we're egging it on, and it's just costing, because the Russians got to defend themselves, especially people in Donbass, where they killed up now 22,000, 14,000 before the start of the special military operation. And who do you blame this on? Zelensky could have said no. He could have said no in 2022 and gone with the peace deal that was offered in April 2022.
Well, he's making too much money off it.
Yeah,
that's the point. There are a lot of people in the Ukraine that have become quite wealthy. They're not facing death or destruction. But what we've seen actually just develop in the last couple of weeks. We've got actually active duty British, Polish, French, and Australian troops going into Odessa, and the Russians are going to kill them. And NATO may be trying to deliberately create an incident where they will get further embroiled in this war before it ends. Which, I hope that doesn't happen. But there is sort of a part of me that does, for the simple reason that it's going to take NATO just taking the beating of its life for them to put all this madness and insanity behind them and sit down and recognize Russia's not the threat. Russia's not the enemy. Russia should be their ally. But instead, they want to fight Russia. They want to fight China. They're just they're insane, clinically insane.
Is that what it's all about, Andrei? That the BRICS nations, the de-dollarization, this whatever's going on in Iran, in Israel, I don't think it's over yet. The fat lady hasn't sung, and so we never know what is going to happen there. But I think, isn't it the grand strategy is to break up Russia, like at the Berlin Conference in 1885, broke up South Africa into different states and taken over by different countries in Europe. Is that what really this is all about? They still have a pipe dream of breaking Russia into a bunch of states that they can manage?
Yeah, that's the final goal. Absolutely. It always was. They cannot live with the fact that Russia sits on the 1/3 of the old world resources. And but then again, as I am on record, they are so militarily and economically illiterate there, especially in the United Kingdom. United Kingdom is the basket case intellectually. It's a bunch. Evidently, incest and inbreeding finally caught up with them. So, and I can tell you one thing, that, they are delusional, precisely because we are talking about the implosion of the serious education in the combined West altogether. It is essentially these are degree meals which produce nincompoops. And, only in the United Kingdom you can believe that you can prepare the cadre officer in 44 weeks in the Sandhurst, which is below the, plumbing vocational school in some other countries, But yes, these people believe that. You have those people then go into their general staff, whatever, 9 months long courses, or even King's College, where they study so-called strategy or whatever passes for them. You literally have morons. You saw yourself what they did in Kursk. They killed 80,000 of the combined arms army. Average British, or for that matter now, American general or admiral, they won't be allowed to command, the rowboat somewhere in Africa. These are the type of people who actually, for some reason, think that they are so amazing that, as I already stated, Napoleon, Genghis Khan, Alexander Nevsky,
Gustav,
von Manstein.
Yes.
Yeah, they are sitting in their graves when they hear all those idiotic statements about United States Army being the finest fighting force in history, and let alone this Chihuahua, which is today United Kingdom. This is a little island. If you remove there from Rolls-Royce, I'm talking about the jet engine production and a couple of other industries, they will not have even their own metallurgy. This is their, bottom of the 20th economies in the world, but they still pretend that they're great, and you cannot explain to narcissists and delusional imbecile that you are idiot. They are dangerous because of that, but that's why Russia has to maintain an overwhelming military advantage for those people to understand that they will be killed if they do something stupid. So there you go. This is how it works. It's on principle. Always was, always will be. You can get much further with the kind word and the gun than otherwise you will get with the kind word alone. And this is the only way to talk to West or whatever will be left of it after, by 2050, I don't expect some European country existing as they exist today. So, and that's what it is.
Right. Larry, listen, you were just there on the May 9th Great Patriot Victory Day. You were there, right? You were in in
No,
Moscow.
I was there after.
Okay, you were there, but recently, and you talked about, I took the subway here today, as I usually do, and it's a grotesque experience. I don't know if you got a chance to see the Moscow subway system, and then the streets. You go to any one of the airports there, Larry. There's not one crack in the road. Any of the airports, you see the street cleaners on every avenue and every small street throughout the day, and the city is on fire in terms of business. No matter where I went, it was crowded and people were nice. There's an illusion, and plus, the ruble has gone up. It's the strongest currency this year. Larry, what was it like for you? You agree?
Well, I've been to Paris, to the Louvre, and all I can say is going into the Moscow subway system is comparable to going into the Louvre.
Yeah,
going into
Taj Mahal,
world-class museum. Yeah. And I can't compare it to the Hermitage because I've been outside but not inside the Hermitage in St. Petersburg. But the thing that you're struck with in Moscow is Paris has been called the city of lights, but I think they got the wrong city. It should be Moscow.
Yeah.
Moscow should now be classified as the city of lights. When you include the entire urban area, they're close to 20 million people, I think.
Right.
The whole metropolitan area. It's a massive city. It brings together, like what you say, are the best parts of a New York City with the best parts of Washington, D.C.
Right.
Without all the trash, rats, and crime and drug use.
Don't remind me. I just saw like 12 rats the size of a dog in going on the Q train.
Getting on the
Q train. You got to watch out for these big rats. What is it, Andrei, that makes it so special? And as you point out, we are no longer the supreme military force, if we ever were. This is something that you go back to de Tocqueville and the vanity that he saw in 1837. Talk vaingloriousness. You mentioned of the average American back then. They were thinking that they were supernatural. It was that mindset that has led to the decay and to the downfall of this country at this point. Can you make that connection?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Albeit it has to be understood that Tocqueville's definition of this garrulous patriotism and basically United States at that time, people there willing to listen to all kind of flattery just to satisfy themselves. It was primarily applies to elites. I mean, American people in general are very decent folks, actually.
Right.
Normal Americans doesn't care about war. They don't want to fight war. They want to, live normal life, and especially now under these deteriorating conditions. But American elite, so-called elite, the United States doesn't produce statesmen anymore. The last statesman I remember was George Bush Sr. That was the end of the statesmanship in United States. But primarily, you have those people who are brainwashed, and they love flattery. And as such, narcissism became the modus operandi, essentially, for both American elites and the United States as a country, because obviously the United States is run by elites. People can only vote and they live their lives. But primarily you have this, again, I am on record, anybody with the Ivy League degree in sociology or journalism or political science, it has to be considered disqualifying factors for their employment in any serious capacity. And you have now, obviously, this incredible, secure-abusing leeches called think tanks. You look at those people, most of them are morons, uneducated. They do not understand what they're dealing with. They have all those sort of degrees. And as the result, you have this whole cultural milieu, which forms also their unified view of the United States, of the outside world. And the United States never knew the outside world. But if it was bad before, right now we're looking at people who live in the alternative universe, which is the consequence. We cannot obviously scale up some person like President Trump, who is the narcissist in the extreme, to the whole nation. We cannot do that, but we can scale it up to most of the elite. And American elite is narcissistic. And the opposite of your side of this same coin is, of course, what? The complex of inferiority and tremendous insecurity. That is why they need to constantly speak about themselves in the self-aggrandizing manner. They have to constantly reinforce their own idea about themselves, that they are great and the greatest in the world. And as a result, it inevitably, and this is not my words, these are the words by one of the greatest FBI profilers, Candice DeLong, who did all kinds of and does all kinds of the criminal shows, that inevitably this brings people into the alternative universe. They begin to live in this fantasy world, which, of course, we saw. Again, we cannot apply this to Mr. Biden because he wasn't really there to start with. He was, yeah. But in terms of Trump, we can see it clearly. This is the pinnacle. This is this famous H.L. Mencken's, famous quotation about, as we improve our democracy, and eventually our people's heart's desires will find its, fulfillment, and we will have the downright Warren, adorning the White House. So this is what happened. We have literally people who live in an alternative universe, and they do not understand reality, which is very complex and requires a very serious, academic and human and life experience. And what can I say? In this respect, de Tocqueville, he was obviously prophetic, no doubt about it. And especially when he talked his famous chapter, why people, express their patriotism in different ways. What you have now, we have not just garrulous patriotism, we have actually delusional one. And essentially, by doing so, they discredited the whole notion of the real patriotism, because people, those people who are patriots, they want to improve their country. They do not care, hurling insults and diminishing other people. They want to improve their own country. They want to make it better. They want to make it more beautiful, more livable, and things like that. What we have today, we have the United States of foreign policy completely subverted by the AIPAC, Israel lobby, and we have people on the American side in the political elite and Congress who I don't even know. Most of them won't qualify to be plumbers, and nothing against plumbers. This is very serious and important skill. It requires serious labor, and and you look at that, that's how civilizations die. And we are looking at the end of the 500-year, reign of the Western civilization. Yeah. It is in the process of decomposition, and we need to take a very serious look at the United States if it can survive as the unified country. Because, it is torn country. Right. And MAGA, in many respects, many people say, oh, yeah, they have been not very sophisticated and things like that of this nature. But MAGA, which, by the way, was betrayed by Trump, is the kind of this proto-American new nation. But obviously, as we know, we have to wait and see, because nothing we can do about it anymore. Just, we can make shows, we can talk about it, and probably try to educate people, but this is pretty much the extent of our ability to influence those events. And educate people. That's the only thing. Yeah, maybe it will give it, effect down the road.
I don't know if that's possible. Everyone's on their cell phone. I can tell you they're not reading Dostoevsky and Tolstoy on their cell phones in the subway. Rats on the outside, inside. It looks like a modern-day Shanghai opium den. You go into everyone's on their cell phone. I want to go to the Iron Dome. I'm looking at the S-500. That system seems to be like impeccable, and I'm looking at the Iron Dome, and I'm looking at David's sling and THAAD and the Patriot missile system. What happened there? What happened to the Iron Dome? It was like a torn screen.
Yeah, it is. Iron Dome is not designed.
Yeah. Go ahead, Andrei.
Iron Dome is not the system designed to intercept the ballistic missiles of this type. which is of course the what is called in the intermediate range. It is designed to take those pipes from sewer, which Hamas and Hezbollah were doing, and it was designed to intercept those slow, predictable missiles. But for that, for other type of the missiles, Israel had these hats, they have this sling, David sling, and all kinds of those things which supposedly be very sophisticated. In reality, these are Boeing and Raytheon products with the Israeli Rafael merely unscrewing the labels and screwing on their own labels like, oh yeah, it's Israeli system. So they are pretty much junk. They are not designed for the serious war. It's a Patriot factory, which is Russians they're laughing at it. This is not to say that it cannot kill. It can shoot down something, so.
Larry, you got to go. Larry, you got a few more minutes?
Yeah, I can
yes,
hang
guys,
on
I need to.
I'm going to let you go, Andrei. Thank you so much. We're going to let you go a few more minutes with Larry, and I wish you the best, and I hope you come back. You are one of my, you're a hero of mine, all right? Andrei Martyanov.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Andrei.
Later, my friend.
All right. Larry, let's go back to what we were talking about earlier about Zelensky. What is the fate of Zelensky at this point? What options does he have? And what's the over-under in terms of him being on the planet, time-wise?
I don't think he'll see the new year. So I think his days are numbered. I think he's got probably a 30% chance of surviving this year. I think he is likely to go the way of Muammar Gaddafi or Ngo Diem in Vietnam.
No,
I
Dennis.
think he'll be killed in office. So this has fallen apart rapidly on him. It really is the decay of the Ukrainian military and Russian strength is growing day by day. We're looking at the end game now.
One last question here, Larry. I want to talk about, you talked about it, it's not over in Iran yet, right? It's not over in Iran yet.
Oh, no.
No. I mean, I don't know there's a lot of games being played. There's no way you can trust. You mentioned it yesterday in your blog about this is like Michael Corleone saying, it can't wait. Sollozzo wants to kill Pop, and they want to kill Khomeini, and they want to overthrow this regime and take control. And so it's not over. Right?
It's not. In fact, if you listen to Trump today and his press conference, he was all bent out of shape over the Ayatollah Khamenei's speech yesterday. And in the speech, Khamenei was defiant. We didn't lose. We won. We're not going to submit to the United States or Israel. We're not going to be dictated. That was his message. Oh, Trump was terribly offended with that. And then Trump is saying, again, threatening to go back and bomb Iran. This time Iran telegraphed, it gave the United States an off-ramp because Israel was losing. Israel only had about 2 weeks left, and very quickly. Both ports that received container shipments coming in and out were shut down. There was no maritime traffic going into Israel anymore. The only international airport in Israel, Ben Gurion, shut down. The oil refineries in Haifa and Ashdod closed, shut down because of the missile strikes. Power stations being taken out. The equivalent of the headquarters of the Pentagon, CIA, FBI, National Security Agency, all were hit, damaged. We don't know what level of destruction, but they were hit, certainly. Major military air bases also struck.
You got to yell.
The reality for Israel was it no longer had air defense, and it would have been basically starved into submission within 2 or 3 weeks. That's why Trump was desperate to get a ceasefire.
Larry, so you can read all about this in Sonar 21. Is it sonar21.com? Is that it?
Yep.
Yeah,
That's it.
and on a day, just subscribe to it, folks, because you'll get every single day you will get an article, and I think today you'll see 4 videos because I know you've had a very busy day as it is, and you still got to judge in 20 minutes. Thank you so much, Larry Johnson, for once again coming to bat and getting us Andrei. You guys really work well together. We're going to do this again very soon.
Thank you.
All right, Larry Johnson. Larry, we're going to play some music for you, okay?